Good morning and welcome to Mountain Harmony Gardening. I am Kristen. Today I'm going to be showing you how I take care of my orchids. The first thing that I want to talk about is watering orchids. That seems to be the biggest question that everyone has. You want to use distilled water. Whatever brand you have around you is perfectly fine. And you want to water them once a week. You want to take the distilled water, you want to fill them all the way up. So you'll see that some of the bark is floating and then it's all the way to the top. Sometimes you have to let it soak in a little bit to let the air bubbles out. And you want to do this once a week. And you want to soak them from 15 to 20 minutes, kind of depending on how hot it is outside and how dry your climate is. I just set the timer on the stove and I let them soak. While my orchids are soaking, I want to show you what I do to clean the leaves. I get a paper towel. I use the same distilled water. Get a little bit on the paper towel. And then I just wipe the leaves off. Because everybody's house gets pretty dusty, at least mine does. We have forced air heating and that blows around dust, rabbit hair, cat hair, my hair. So to keep them growing well, every once in a while, you want to give them a bath by wiping off all of their leaves. And you can be pretty gentle with this. And I bought this one. And that one. And there you go. Now you have a nice clean orchid. Now the way that orchids grow is their leaves come out from the top like this. So as they grow up, their bottom leaves will die off. I've been saving this little tiny leaf down here to show you guys that once they are completely dry is when you take them off. And even on this one, you can see that the tip of this is starting to turn yellow and kind of not looking so good. That's okay. This is how orchids grow. So once this one completely is dry, then you take it off. And on this orchid, you can see that the process is a little bit further along, but that's okay, because once this one completely dries up, we'll take it off. And I'm trying to see if I have an orchid. Yes, like this one has pretty new leaf right here on top that's come out. The way that the flower spikes grow on these is that after a first couple leaves, you will get a flower spike. So this is the old one that I've trimmed back after it bloomed. And you can see right down in here that right here we're getting another new flower spike. Since this one is still green, there's the potential of it growing another flower spike, so that's why I've left it on. And on my little one here, you can see that it's got a new flower spike right here. And also, it is growing a new flower spike right here. Even though it still has all of its pretty flowers up here, it's already starting to grow two new spikes. And when this one is done blooming, I will cut it back here at the first node. Actually, I'll probably go all the way down to here since it's already growing a new flower spike there. But once that happens, I will show you guys exactly how I trim these up, probably like in a short. And if they go completely yellow, you want to trim them all the way down. Like right here is where I trimmed one down. On this one, you can see that there used to be a spike on this side, and I trimmed it down once it went yellow. And on my other Phalaenopsis, I know it's a little bit harder to see, but right in there is another one that I trimmed back. So only if they are completely yellow and they have died back do you trim the flower spikes off. Otherwise you trim them back and you can get more flowers on them. Next I want to talk about their roots. These are kind of what you call air roots, and they're perfectly normal. And that the way you can tell the difference between the roots and the flower spikes is they've got a different looking structure. They also kind of get a little bit of a silvery color to them. I could turn it around. There's another one growing out the back. I think this one has the most growing out of it. This is perfectly normal, and it shows that you have a healthy orchid. Do not trim them off, just let them go. Now I want to talk about baby orchids or keikis. This is the mama plant, and this is the baby one, the keiki that we got. When this still had its flower spike, this one right here, I trimmed it back and I noticed that, oh, it's getting another flower spike, but it started growing these little tiny leaves off of it. And I was like, wait a second, that's not flower spikes. So I watched a channel called Miss Orchid Girl. I will put a link to her in the description because this is where I learned everything on how to grow my orchids so well. And she said that that's actually a keiki. I was so excited because it's very rare to get a keiki off of one of your flower spikes. Usually you have to put on hormones. It's a long process. So it did it naturally. So I let this get nice and big, and once it had a few leaves on it, I trimmed it off. It even has its own little flower spike on it. And then it grew a couple of roots, and then I trimmed it, put it in its own pot, and now I have a whole entire another orchid. And this one has not quite bloomed yet, but I'm really excited to see how much it looks like the mother plant. So if you can get a keiki, cherish it. The last couple things I want to talk about now that the orchids are done soaking is the medium that you put them in. And Miss Orchid Girl recommended using bark instead of the moss that they come in. I have found that if they come in moss, like this one here is actually in moss, and with the moss they tend to stay moist longer and have an easier chance of rotting. I have found that with this bark they do not rot. I have just found that it's been a lot better with this type of medium. So she seems to be the expert, so I definitely took her advice. And you want to fertilize these guys about every 2 weeks, or so is good for them. And I actually save the water, and I water my other plants with it. So I pour it in there. Now I want to show you the clear pots, and you can see their roots inside of them. And then I just put this back, and then I do it again. So the containers that you get for these, the biggest thing that you want are these orchid pots. The outside container really doesn't matter. It's the orchid pots that matter. So they have some pretty good drainage in them. You can see that. You can even see with this one a lot more of the roots. And this one. So like there are some brown roots in here that have died back. So this one probably needs to be repotted pretty soon. But this is my oldest orchid too. I've had this one for several years. So we just do this with all of the orchids. Just let them dry out a little bit. And you don't need to save any of the water for the orchid that's in the pot. You completely drain their pots. If they're a little bit dripping, that's okay. Oh, this one has a really good root system. Look at that. Really nice and green and healthy. Good. And that is kind of Orchid Care 101. The last thing that I want to talk about is sunlight. This is a west-facing window with two big trees outside, so when it's not winter time, it gets some dappled sunlight. Even during the winter, when they get just a little bit of direct sunlight, they seem to do really well. I hope this was helpful for all of you guys. If you have any questions, just put them down in the comments. I get a lot of questions about orchid care, and as you can see, the tips that I've given you here have made beautiful orchids for me. So thanks for watching, everybody. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment. Happy gardening!